Welcome to the Club Zoo. They're like her. They're a little different. And in fact, until he passed away a few years ago, I was friends with the guy that was in charge of the Birmingham Zoo at one time. And there really was animals in the collection that were like the three-legged meerkat or a pygmy hippo with an aversion to older women. Did you work with anybody who's involved in working in that field to get some ideas for those?
Well, actually, this is like the good, I say I don't do much research, but this is where I did the research. Not only because I loved animals as a kid and I love animals now, but, oh, and I should show you, I have my Harvey tattoo. So like, I was very dedicated to this dog that who Boomer is based on. I went, so when I was in college, I did not want to be a writer. I was a philosophy major. I did not really want to be anything. I did not. I just wanted to be a college student with no direction. There's this joke from The Simpsons that's Lisa wants to be a philosophy major, and Homer says, like, what are you going to do? Work at the philosophy factory? So I heard that a lot, but I did not want to be a writer. I just, so one summer I was like, well, maybe I'll be a vet, even though I wasn't pre-med. So that's not really an option. But I took an internship. As long as I lived with my parents, they didn't really care what I did over the summer. So I took an internship at the Boston Museum of Science. I grew up outside of Boston, and if you have ever been to the Museum of Science in Boston, it's like a science museum, but there is a secret basically fully accredited zoo underneath the museum that is where they bring out animals, like, and all day they have, like, meet the horned owl at 3 o'clock or something. But I always thought when I was a kid or a visitor to the museum that those animals lived off-site and were like brought in every day. They all live underneath the museum, and you can see them through this one viewing window if you ever go there, but you mostly just see these 4 snake cages, and you can kind of see that there's beyond that, but it's just these 4 snake cages, and it's actually 3 rooms. So I got an internship there, just cleaning cages, and I worked at anthropology, and then I cleaned cages. And so all summer, so there was the three-legged meerkat, Clayton the prairie dog, Annie the epileptic bobcat, who was dropped off at a zoo in Florida, and then got transferred up there. So I learned about how zoos do trade animals. Tons and tons of, we get a lot of alligators because drug dealers do like having alligators, and then they get too big, and then so all cops in New Hampshire are always like, yep, we found, like, we did a drug bust again and found 3 alligators, and like calling the museum. So all this sort of, and snapping turtles, and a lot, we did a bunch of like release into the wild turtles. But the epileptic bobcat actually, this story is just so crazy. This zoo in Florida got like, whoever, the zookeeper shows up to the gate one day, and there is a baby bobcat sitting at the gate that its mom had left there and then they discovered shortly after that the bobcat had epilepsy. So the mama bobcat knew this bobcat cannot survive, so I'm going to take her to somewhere that can take care of her, which is just crazy. So Annie the bobcat lived for like 15 years, I think. She died after I worked there, but she was already, and she was very particular about who she would get her food from. And so a lot of the animals in the book are based on those animals. But then when I was in the middle of writing Rabbit Cake, this is the mistake I made. I thought, okay, I need to do a ton of research because I'd never written a novel before. Didn't know that really probably what I needed to do was go visit a zoo, get the map of the zoo, and then imagine the rest of it. I was like, I really need to understand what it's like to work at a real zoo that has like exhibits and visitors, because I didn't have that experience, because I worked at a closed zoo. And only had to walk around the museum with Conan the Screech Owl, who was I was the Screech Owl expert that summer. So I got a job between, oh, here's Willie, I'll show you him in a minute. Between the 2 years I spent in graduate school, went back to Boston and got a job at the Franklin Park Zoo in Jamaica Plain in Boston. And I just really didn't need it. So the job that I got was the problem, not the zoo itself. I got a job not working with the animals, but working with children. So I guess I would have been 27 that summer. And like 27 is not too old to do anything except be a camp counselor. So I was always like, my back hurts at the end of the day, because the other camp counselors were high school students and college students. And so I was also like, I was not the boss, but I was like the counselor for the counselors who had all these sort of like relationship dramas. And then also for my kids who were I don't know how I make them fifth graders in my memory, but they may have been, anyway, they were in elementary school, maybe middle school. And so that added, even though I had very little to do with the actual animals, that added like the hummingbird house and the layout of the zoo. And some of those animals and some of those stories are also real. Like some of the names I didn't even change, from those, like Christopher the lion. And he really did kill his lioness partner during visiting hours, which was a media nightmare. Not when I was there, but it was like one of those zoo stories. And then there was also a giraffe who had wasting disease, whose name was not Harrison, but I don't remember his real name, but he had wasting disease, and he did not die when I was there either. But so that kind of research I did real like full immersive, like as much as possible, and just constantly surprised by the things that I was learning about the animals. And I like don't remember the children at all, but I'm sure they had a fine summer.